Hello and welcome to today's episode of Health University, where I have the good fortune of introducing my friend and colleague, Dr. Amatma Simmons. Dr. Simmons is a fertility specialist with more than 15 years in practice with a specialty in helping women and couples improve their fertility and their pregnancy outcomes. She is board certified in naturopathic endocrinology, and she's the creator of the restorative fertility method. She's host of the Egg Meets Sperm podcast, where I just had the good fortune of chatting with her on her podcast. And she is the best-selling author of Fertility Secrets and a book called Infertility. And in is in parentheses, struggles, secrets, and successes. She's been the recipient of multiple awards, Best Naturopathic Doctor in 2015 and 2020, Top Women in Medicine Doctor in 2020, 2021, and in the Berkeley Hall of Fame in 2022. I'm sure among others. I'm looking at possibly an old bio. She's interviewed hundreds of specialists on her podcast about fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. And really, listeners, like I can't stress enough, it's not just about the positive pregnancy test. So she's going to have lots of valuable information about, the getting pregnant and the being pregnant and the healthy pregnancy. Dr. Ohm is also medical advisor for Mira Fertility, and many of you probably are familiar with Mira as a fertility app that really helps track hormones and now is really also moving into the perimenopausal support structure. And so she's going to talk with us today about the importance of doing what we need to do for recurrent pregnancy loss and to stay healthy. So, welcome, Dr. Amatma. Is there anything that I missed in your
Oh
introduction?
gosh,
I want to add?
no,
Okay,
it's all good. Thank you so
okay.
much for having me. I'm so
My
excited to
pleasure.
chat.
My pleasure. So, we want to talk about some of the misconceptions around fertility. What would you say are maybe the top three misconceptions that you hear and see surrounding this pandemic, if you will, of infertility?
I think the first one is just around age, right? And I believe it's a really big myth that's plaguing the entire ecosystem of fertility, which
Mhm.
is our fertility drops off of a cliff at 35. And we know as holistic practitioners, like that there's no cliff, right? It's a general, slow, steady decline.
Mm,
And the myth actually comes out of the 1800s in France, not out of science, but out of churches. So when I was trying to get pregnant and thinking about my fertility and all of that and freaking out about my age, and like literally like lock myself in a room for 9 months trying to like research everything and try to make sense of it all. And what I realized was that this thing that I had learned in medical school that was like guiding all of my fears around whether or not I would ever be a mother were based in something that is not based in science. And as soon as I realized that, like something broke free, right? Like I was like, oh my God, if this is not true, then what else is not true? And that was literally the turn that I remember that I took when I was I was in this relationship trying to decide if I was going to stay with him, try to have a child with him, because I was in this rush of like, well, I'll never find the right person in time to have a baby.
mm,
And like, thank God that I was looking for answers because that alone was the moment that I was like, I'm done. Like, give me my
yeah.
divorce. I'm done.
Wow.
We're getting over this relationship and moving on.
Wow.
And um and like I would have locked myself into a relationship and a partnership that I didn't want just for the sake of motherhood.
For the,
And
the desperation of if not
the
now,
yeah, the
when?
desperation and the like what if I don't find someone and what if I never have a child? And like that fear that runs through us in that time period is all like just based on a myth from
Right.
the 1800s. It doesn't even
Crazy.
apply to modern today.
It's crazy.
So,
Well, I
yeah.
would say
So,
then, if I may, and I know
yeah.
forgive me if I'm
No,
interrupting,
no, no.
but
Yeah, go for
this
it.
is so juicy. If it's not age, Yet, if we see women in their, late 30s,
Mhm.
early 40s struggling,
Mhm.
then what would you attribute it to being?
Well, so I don't think that it's just age,
I agree.
right? I do think that there is an aspect of lifestyle, diet, how we have run our lives for the last 40 years that is going to still have an impact.
Exactly.
But we actually have more control of it than we think.
Yeah.
Right. So when we say it's just age, just because you're 35, now you no longer are fertile, versus your hormones and your lifestyle are telling us that you like this is a little bit of a struggle for you and that we can do something about it
Yeah.
is a completely different space to be in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So like I think that it's like one is disempowering while the other is like, yeah, that sucks, but at least I can do something about it.
Exactly. And yes, I can see how my lifestyle, choices could be contributing over time because age, we use the term age, but it's time
It's time.
to
Yeah.
have created this environment internally, but I can use time to change the internal
Mhm.
environment and improve my fertile health.
And I will, to add to this conversation, there's a lot of buzz in the longevity space around your chronological age versus your biological or phenotypical age. And so I did the analysis, right? I was like, I don't know what my phenotypical age is. And I'm 9 years younger than my biological or my chronological age.
Beautiful. Of
So
course. Mhm.
it's like doing the fertility work that I've been doing, and I apply all of this on myself, and I continue to live that way. And like I am aging younger and younger because of it, right?
Yeah.
So someone said to me, and I don't want to have any more children. I have one, very happy with that. But my friend said to me, "Well, you're 44, or you can't even have another child." And I was like, "Oh, trust me, if I wanted to have a child, I could have another child
Uh-huh.
because I test my hormones, because I know my bio age, and because I know the lifestyle that I'm living, and I know that." There are some things that I do that I wouldn't do if I was trying to get pregnant, like the hair.
Uh-huh.
um, but I do them with the awareness of like, this is important to me and it far outweighs, and I don't want to have a child right now,
Right,
right? Like I'm done with that phase of my life.
right.
But there's just so many like levers that I feel like we can pull when
Absolutely.
we're in the space of fertility and wanting to get pregnant that really go beyond our chronological age. Like
I
that's
love
just
this.
such a
Love, love, love. I love that you're talking about that you still apply the protocols, if you will, for your fertility, even though fertility is not the conversation you want to have because it doesn't matter what you call it. It's health. It's
yeah.
reproductive health. And our system being systematized, we love our systems. We sort of break it up, right? We chop it up like, okay, now you're done with fertility. Now you're in perimenopause, as though we've crossed some kind of bridge and we have to leave our fertile health, our reproductive health behind us, and then only go to mitigating signs and symptoms.
Mhm.
But what you've just said is it's the same walk. So
Well, and even more than that, I would say following the fertility health protocols for me is a way to transition into perimenopause and menopause without the signs and symptoms,
exactly.
right? So like I'm in it for the long haul and I'm sure you also are like
I
very
am.
much
I'm 66,
believe
so I am done for certain with having babies, but
yeah.
I am not done with living the most vital, healthy life that I can. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that fertility is this outpouring of vitality, right? Our fertility is one indicator of how vital are we and how much of this like life force energy do we have.
Mhm.
And we can keep that life force energy forever.
Yeah. Yeah,
right? We can be 100 years old and still have that fertile life force energy,
absolutely.
regardless of whether or not we're going to have a physical baby or a business baby or whatever other babies we want,
Mentoring,
grandbabies.
absolutely, grandbabies, exactly, exactly. In the the village setting, right? The wise crone is not having babies, but she's mentoring and teaching the women
Mhm.
who are of their fertile years. So she's still mothering. She's
Yeah,
just, kind of doing it a little bit differently. That is
yeah.
beautiful. And I'm sorry, I realize I interrupted you because I get so jazzed. We talked about we covered one of the misconceptions or the myths, and if we
Mhm.
covered more than one,
Gosh, that's only one. So the second one I think is around this misconception, misbelief that our partners, the male side of this, is just as important as the female side. And I don't know where it started, but we have very um, patriarchal societies that believe that men are fertile forever and it's never their problem. And oh, I have an 18-year-old, so I'm good. It's not me. And I like have these conversations with men endlessly, or the men that have really crappy sperm and are told by their doctors, oh, you're amazing, they're wonderful. And it's like, why are we trying to appease when we know that's not true, right? We know that optimal fertility in a man is just as important for him, but is important for pregnancy outcomes.
yeah,
So there's a lot of data on recurrent pregnancy loss and how that might actually connect more to the male than the
absolutely,
female. So
absolutely,
here's this woman going through trauma after trauma after trauma, yet no one is testing the guy.
yeah,
No one cares
yeah,
about what his overall health is.
yeah,
And
yeah.
no one is having a conversation that is actually empowering him to make some changes in his life
Mhm.
that are going to support them to have the family that they are dreaming about.
Couldn't agree more. I can't imagine that there's a man out there listening, or a spouse or a partner of a woman out there listening, who isn't saying, I want to do everything I can to ensure a healthy pregnancy, a healthy baby.
Yeah.
It's because it's not just does conception happen? It is, what are those DNA contents lining up and looking like? And are
Yeah.
there any, disease or genetic disorders that I could be mitigating? I could be sort of t taking down the toggle on
Yes.
that switch by eating properly and maybe not
Mhm.
putting stuff in my hair and
Mhm.
or hair growth
Or
products
or the fragrances in the car,
in the
right?
car.
Guys are like, I don't know what it is with
Uh,
guys in their cars,
yeah,
but their
yeah,
cars gotta smell good.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the phthalates in those
yeah,
fragrances are
yeah,
killing sperm,
absolutely.
lowering testosterone levels. There's just so many impacts that men are not thinking about, but as soon as they become aware of it, and as soon as they are given this, like, hey, you could actually be, and they're like, what? Yes, let's do it.
Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
like men want this, right? Just as much as women most of the time.
Yeah.
So for them
And
to
when
be
they see
brought
their
to the
women going
table,
through, when they see their partners going through a pregnancy, recurrent pregnancy loss, it's helpless. I mean,
mhm,
they're suffering just as badly, perhaps
yeah,
differently,
yes,
because they are, they're helpless to do anything, except they may
right,
not be helpless.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I think that those two, there's maybe a third one that I could throw in, but those two are kind of the big myths that if we broke through these two things,
Yeah.
we would have a very different approach to fertility
Brilliant.
than the one we currently have.
Brilliant. Let's keep it with those two then, because I think they're so profound. Adding a third for the sake of adding a third. I don't want to dilute the importance of this because
Yeah,
I really think
no, I,
it's
I
critical.
truly believe like these two are my
Yeah,
like one and two. Let's do this.
yeah,
Like, if I can help couples break through these two things, then we have a very different relationship with fertility, with how we're approaching fertility, and
Mhm.
how we work as a team
Mhm.
to be able to get pregnant and have this family that we're dreaming about.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So we touched upon the fact that infertility is becoming, more and more and more pronounced. They now say 1 in 5, and people are struggling with fertility, and of that, half are male factor. So, what do you do when someone comes to you saying, oh, it is 1 in 5, I should just run off to IVF, or my benefits cover that. Like, what
Mm.
is your response to that? What do you think is
Oh,
causing, and what do you think can alter that trajectory?
that's a great question. I think there are about 15 root causes. There's way more than that. But if we were to like kind of rein it in, there's about 15 major root causes that are influencing fertility outcomes
Mhm.
in the 1 in 5, right? And when people say 1 in 5, it's really important to realize they're only talking about women under 35. So all those women over 35, we're not even going there,
Right.
right? They're like in the boat of, oh, you're screwed. You
They're
just need
written
to
off.
walk
Yeah.
yourself into an IVF clinic.
Yeah.
And I think by the time women are 40, 41, they're being told, you're too old, you need an egg donor. And I have a lot of patients in this boat that we actually have worked with, we've supported, they're at optimal fertility. And then we're like, let's go do IVF because it's faster.
Mhm.
At this point, it's actually the biggest lever that we can turn if you're open to it, right? It's not a demand, but I think that there is the space for IVF to become like the kind of impetus to get pregnant faster instead of waiting for natural conception to happen.
Absolutely. And especially if somebody wants more than one child, if
Yeah.
the decision is we want a family of two, three,
Hmm.
then I'm always saying, let's get you ready for IVF then,
Yeah.
because what you might not have is time on the other side, because we don't know
Yes.
what's going to happen between now
Exactly.
and when you're finished
Exactly.
lactating.
Exactly. And a lot of those women go to the fertility clinic after we've sent them there, and they come back deflated because the doctor is like, "Oh, you're 43. There's no way. You just need an egg donor, blah 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 blah."
Mm.
Right? So now I just prep women like before you go, I'm just going to tell you, this fertility clinic is awesome. We like them a lot. And this is what they're going to have to say to you because that just covers their butts
Yep.
to
Yep. Yep.
against lawsuits and all of those types of
Yep.
things. And
Mhm.
and just it's unfortunate that it's such a deflating conversation
Mhm.
because in my opinion, if they had ways to evaluate women besides age and ways to interpret what's happening with them besides age,
Mhm.
then maybe those conversations wouldn't feel so hopeless.
Right. Right.
But we're, I know that we're super confident and we know that when they go in for their IVF cycle, they're likely to be successful if they
Absolutely.
have optimized and done all the work that we are doing upfront.
Yep.
So we have no problem with it. I'm like, yes, no problem. I understand that you think we need an egg donor. Just do the IVF
Yeah,
cycle. Like
uh-huh,
we're good.
uh-huh. It's kind of like, it's almost going into a negotiation, knowing, or going into a card game, knowing you've got this straight flush or whatever. Like, you can hear someone say, oh, your odds of winning are lower, but you can just know in your heart of hearts with a Mona Lisa smile, like, okay, let's just try this.
Yeah,
And let
yeah.
and let me surprise us all
Mm,
with the wonderful outcomes. I
yeah.
think that there are becoming more, some studies, some designs that are trying to, demonstrate that certain protocols, again, we live in a protocol-based, riddled society, are improving some outcomes, especially for like like the diminished ovarian reserve population, because people are having their babies later. So it really is a niche that is getting better attention. And I hope that the results will show exactly this, that within there's a group out here called the Buck Institute
Mm.
for aging, and so they're actually looking at ovarian reserve, diminished ovarian reserve, as you say, regenerative healing, and how can lifestyle improve these outcomes. So I think we're there. We're just beginning to see that now.
Yeah.
So
Yes. And I think we're going to see more and more of it.
yeah. Thank you for sharing in our conversation here at Health University. One of the ways in which we help people improve their fertility is through our 5-element fertility quiz. Please click on the link below at yourfertilityquiz.com and take the short quiz. You'll receive a free report that includes easy to implement ideas to improve your whole health and your fertile health. Now let's return to our topic in today's episode.
In terms of how to support couples that are in that like 1 in 5,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to understand what are the root causes, what are the underlying factors that are making this couple have more challenge than the other 4 that are not having struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that once those things are identified, and if we were to like, I know I'm saying 15, but if we were to like just rein it in and just do some bullet points, I would say the biggest factors that are playing a role are gut health, hormones, liver function, uh, and then we have things like vaginal microbiome, semen microbiome, right? So
Mm-hmm.
and like little variations of those things, endometriosis, PCOS, recurrent pregnancy loss, those are like the more complex things that have a few different things going on.
And
And then the
sometimes those
immune system.
diagnoses are simply the consequence of these
Mhm.
up to 15 imbalances that you just described.
Yeah.
And once endometriosis is present, it's present, right? So you
Mm,
need to not pretend that it doesn't exist, you can mitigate or minimize some of that inflammatory response by making some of these changes that would have otherwise altered the root cause, and then
mhm.
the person has better success. You
Absolutely.
touched upon recurrent pregnancy loss. Can we go there for a bit,
Yes.
because it is
Yeah.
such a painful topic, and it is one that I think people don't have the opportunity to listen to or to learn from, and to realize how common it can be, and what
Mm,
what they can do to change that. So I'll give you
yeah.
the reins on that.
Yeah. So recurrent pregnancy loss, 1 in 3 pregnancies are said to end in loss.
Mhm.
So, and those are pregnancies that we're aware of, right? There are a whole host of women that are having implantation failure, chemical pregnancies that are not being accounted for most of the time.
Yeah.
But this 1 in 3 pregnancies that end in loss, a lot of them end in loss between week 8 and 12.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that is usually things that we have a lot of influence over.
Mhm.
So those are going to be things that we start working through on the hormone side, gut health, just like vaginal microbiome, the things that I just listed.
Yep.
A lot of those are the root causes, autoimmune conditions, especially Hashimoto's, which is
Yes.
really common, really goes under the radar way too often.
Mhm.
We test women just out of the gate. Like
Yeah.
we just want to know if you have antibodies.
Thank
Don't care what your history is. I don't care what your TSH looks like. I'm going
you.
to test your antibodies.
Exactly.
Um,
Mhm.
so those on the female side are really important. But as we were talking about earlier with male fertility, on the male side, things get very interesting.
Yeah.
So we have things like the basics, like a lot of men with high, poor sperm morphology,
Yeah.
let's say. So when I say high, it's actually low.
Yeah.
So below 7% normal sperm, meaning a majority of the sperm are abnormal,
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the easy indicators.
Yeah.
But when things get really tricky, it's the guy's sperm actually looks on the surface amazing. But under the surface, there is something called DNA fragmentation, which is the DNA of the sperm is not optimal. And a lot of studies have shown that high DNA fragmentation
Mm-hmm.
leads to a likelier chance that the woman has a pregnancy loss.
Correct.
So that is, it's super important to test.
Mm-hmm.
The second, and I think that there are two tests that go often under the radar that are even easier and cheaper to test,
Mm-hmm.
which is homocysteine. That's an indicator of how well the body is methylating.
Yeah.
And often, if homocysteine is high, DNA fragmentation is high
Mm-hmm.
because DNA fragmentation is based on methylation, so
Mm-hmm.
much of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, homocysteine is a really easy test, and there's a lot of research that has linked hyperhomocysteinemia, which is high homocysteine levels, to recurrent pregnancy loss in the female.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my favorite
High
one.
homocysteine in the female or the
On
male?
the No, in the male
In the
is
male.
linked
Okay, gotcha.
to
Gotcha.
pregnancy loss in the
Because
woman.
I think of high homocysteine also being related to elevated MTHFR or,
Sure.
mutations.
Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. It's definitely related on the female side. And we kind of assess all of these
Yeah, of
markers on the female
course.
side.
Mhm.
But on the male side, which I think is fascinating
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like so easy to address
yeah.
because high homocysteine's methylation issue, it doesn't always mean that they need a folate vitamin. It means that something is out of whack with their epigenetics that have to do with methylation.
Right.
And we can give them a well-balanced methylation support, or or they should probably eat more broccoli, broccoli sprouts, alfalfa sprouts.
Yeah.
Those things are going to support folate and methylation in the body, and
Got
then increase the antioxidants, which are going to help deflect some of um the negative
the
effect of methylation.
downstream
Yes.
oxidative species. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. So when I know that over here in California, while there are some reproductive urologists who will do DNA fragmentation out the gate, they
Mhm.
usually will do that after a morphology report.
Yes.
And do you find that in your work, are you doing DNA fragmentation immediately out of the gate? Are you doing homocysteine levels first, and then if they're off, then that's a sign to go into DNA fragmentation because there is a cost involved.
Yeah, there is a small-ish cost involved.
Hmm.
And I say smallish because for a long time, the DNA fragmentation tests have been about $700, $800.
Hmm.
We just connected with a company that is offering these tests as an add-on to the semen analysis for like 250.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So the cost savings is enormous. And
Yeah,
at this point, it's almost affordable enough to do it out of the gate.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So why
Rather
not?
than miss it.
Right? Like
Absolutely.
more information, the better.
Absolutely.
With homocysteine, what ends up happening is when homocysteine is high, we do all of the lifestyle and supplement support that we know for healthy methylation. If that homocysteine goes down, we're like, great, good, keep going. If it starts creeping up, which it happens in about 10% of our guys,
Interesting.
then we say, oh, that's a red flag for us to actually do a full epigenetics test. So
God.
we do all the genetic SNPs and we take a look at it more globally because my interpretation is if our usual protocol that works on 9 out of 10 guys is not working, something is out of skew that we need to like just tailor more specifically.
Got it. Got it.
So then we'll do like more epigenetic stuff with those
Mhm.
guys. And then the second test on the male side is hemoglobin A1C,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
high um high blood sugar in men, or the studies, I want to say the studies are specifically like men with pre-diabetes, borderline diabetes are, and of course diabetics, but anyone above a 6
Mm-hmm.
on hemoglobin A1C was correlated to high pregnancy loss rates in the female partner.
Interesting. Interesting.
So again, this
Once again,
very simple
male,
test,
elevated male hemoglobin A1C
correct?
correlated with increased pregnancy loss for the woman.
Yes.
Good to know.
Yeah. So my interpretation of this data has been something is happening globally,
Mm-hmm.
right? These homocysteine, hemoglobin A1C, even I've started correlating insulin even to this picture, metabolic resistance. So this type of like kind of low grade dysfunction
Mm-hmm.
that usually in men get kind of pushed to the side, or whatever, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You need to like exercise more. That's usually the
Yeah.
recommendation
Yeah.
from their
Yeah.
doctors, or it's not ever been tested.
Yeah.
And if we can assess for it and we can start them on a path towards a healthier body,
Mm-hmm.
that my thought is that something is happening in the semen or the sperm, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't know because there's no like measurement that's saying this is exactly how this has impacted sperm,
Right. Right.
right? We don't actually know like what the correlation is. We
Right.
just know that guys with these high levels of one or the other of these markers
Mm-hmm.
had partners that experience pregnancy loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So at much higher rates than not.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost easily tell the story that even if it is in the semen, it is going to affect the sperm. The sperm is living in the semen, and
Mhm,
if the semen is, highly acidic, then how could it not affect the sperm that is trying to
mhm.
swim in that?
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very cool.
something's happening.
Hmm.
Something is happening that is, even if the guy has completely normal, quote unquote, sperm,
Parameters.
there is something that has happened
Hmm.
that is impacting the pregnancy
Yeah,
outcome.
yeah.
Um, and I'm just like fascinated
Yeah.
and blown away by
I'm
it.
in my mind, I'm geeking out with you here, but I want to be respectful of your time and the listening audience's time. I know that this is a drill down, right? You're studying labs all the way to, genetic labs. That being said, are there sort of a few points or tips that you can give to the men saying, regardless, before you even get your semen analysis done, here are some things that you might want to consider. And you did say, take the air freshener out of your car. Your car does
Mhm.
not need to smell like new leather when that new leather smell has nothing to do with actual leather.
Yeah, I think it's guys have actually a lot of fragrances in products,
Yeah,
right? So if something smells good to you, think twice before putting it on or around your body.
got it. Yeah,
And a lot of men don't realize that they're doing it,
yeah.
right? They're like, what do you mean? I don't use any toxins or
I
chemicals.
don't wear
They're not
perfume. I don't
correlating
wear
it.
perfume, but they're putting deodorant on that
Yes,
is, just right
that
there.
smells good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, I want to smell good. I want to smell good, which
Uh-huh.
is great. It's just not the right thing.
Right.
So you really have to find alternatives that are not going to impact
Mhm.
your testosterone
Mhm.
and your overall health and your sperm.
Mhm.
And phthalates are number one on that list.
Mhm.
The second is eating vegetables. Like it sounds really simple, but a lot of men like have forgotten that their diet is just as important as the female.
Yeah.
And we like lately, we have a couple of guys that are all just like, I only eat meat.
Yeah.
I'm on a meat
I was
only
you just
diet.
took the words right out of my mouth there. There's this trend toward the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
And so
And I'm like, well, you can't not eat vegetables. So, we, one of them who's like super strict with it, we have convinced to eat some fermented vegetables every single day, like 2 tablespoons. Sure, I'll take it. I'll
so it's
take
almost,
whatever I
it's
can
almost like
take.
it's almost like a prescription. So he's taking that for his microbiome, but he's not eating vegetables.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
So really important to eat, ideally like a variety of vegetables, a variety of fruit. Um, so that would be number two. And then number three is, I think, tech, the devices that we all have around us. I don't know about you, but the the men in my life are very tech heavy
Yeah.
and have like 3 phones hanging out near their pockets and sit
Mhm.
with a laptop on their
On their
lap.
lap. Hmm.
So all of the things that are just um, emitting these EMFs, and there's a lot of debate around, do EMFs negatively affect our body? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. There isn't a final answer on it.
Well, I guess I would just challenge that by saying, would you say that they are good for our, not you, but
No.
would somebody who's arguing that, there's not the data out there, who would say, what's really good for our body is assaulting 5G in every crevice and orifice we can.
Yeah,
It's
definitely
ridiculous,
not
right?
good.
Yeah,
It may be neutral, but probably less neutral than positive.
yeah.
Uh, so, l- and I get that we can't like eliminate them all from our lives. But if you can pay attention to your sleep environment, if you can not have the Wi-Fi signal right next to your head or right next to your reproductive
Gonads,
organs, that would be
exactly.
great.
Hmm. I
Um,
mean, just heat alone, right? I mean, just the
yes,
heat from those devices
yes,
can't be good for, especially male genitalia. It's all
yeah,
outside.
yeah.
There's no
It's
protection there.
and like really interesting. I'm listening to this book that's talking about testicles from different species, and there are a lot of species that pull the testicles up,
Hmm.
except for mating season, and
Hmm.
then they can like drop them.
Hmm.
Um, Humans are one of the few species that have this vulnerability all the time,
Hmm. Interesting.
right? So we are ex- especially vulnerable to all of the outside influences that can potentially impact your reproductive organs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really important. And then the last thing I would say is focusing on the circadian rhythm
Yeah.
and and this is just as important for women as it is for men, but being able to go to sleep and get at least 8 hours. That hour or two before sleep, you're staying away from blue light, or staying away
Yeah.
from blue
Like,
light,
hmm.
moving towards red light,
Hmm.
either with a filter or glasses, whatever, or just like turn the devices off, be radical,
Yeah. Right.
and then also in the morning getting uh I say like 5 to 10 minutes. If you can do more, awesome. But 5 minutes of full spectrum sunlight within the first 30 minutes of waking up to activate our cortisol.
Yep.
And testosterone for men is actually produced in the morning hours.
Hmm.
So the circadian rhythm is especially important for men so that you can be producing testosterone.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're not getting adequate levels being produced, and we have a testosterone epidemic that I could go on about for another hour.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
It's my dog is who gets me out for full spectrum light every morning, and I cannot be more grateful for she should have an MD on her collar, because that needs to happen. And I know that it's just so healthy for me. So because how we wake is how we go to sleep, and how we go
Mhm.
to sleep is how we wake. So I think those are really great takeaways. And I would say sometimes what we can't do for ourselves when we're really thinking about, no, I'm actually doing this for this baby that we want to have.
Hmm.
Sometimes
Hmm.
we can just get ourselves out of the way and
Yeah.
make the changes that we would otherwise maybe shrug off for ourselves because we really do want to give these babies the best chance at health that we can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like I think our culture, most cultures have done such a good job at disempowering men on
Yeah.
this journey. I would say the opposite. Like, let's empower these men. They want to do something. They just
Yeah.
don't know what that something is.
Uh,
So
yeah.
for all the partners, like all the women that are listening to this, like get your men listening to these things, right? Like share this with your partners because they need to hear this and they want to be doing
They
something.
do. They absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I find that one of the most painful things is when I'm speaking with a woman, because usually it's the woman who's coming into my practice or who I'm seeing, and she's struggling with that. Her partner, her husband, usually been a husband in my practice, doesn't know what to do, and then is feeling frustrated, and then it kind of puts a little bit of a wedge in their relationship because she doesn't know what to do. She's busy taking the shots and doing all of these things and feeling a little bit out of sorts with her body as well. So giving men this opportunity to out the gate make the changes that are going to be helpful for whether or not they are going to try to conceive naturally, go through an IVF process, because as we said, sometimes it's that, people know they want to have more than one child. So, getting ready for a successful IVF is literally, a good insurance policy to have those embryos in the bank. It just lends itself to feeling like it is like the family is working together even before the family is a family, if that makes
Yes.
sense. Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. Like teamwork makes the dream work. My
that's right.
husband has said that so many times, and I
Oh,
love that saying
oh, oh,
because he really like he came into our relationship with this idea of like we're a team. We're doing this together, right?
yeah,
And like there's nothing more beautiful than that
yeah,
picture of creating that family and being the family before child or no child.
yeah.
Like you guys are still a family.
Exactly, exactly. Oh, Dr. Matma, this has been so, so valuable, so inspiring. I want to give you a chance if there's anything that we missed, and everything will be in show notes, links and so forth to be able to reach Dr. Matma. If any of this has raised questions, and I would be stunned if it didn't, you'll be able to, follow through with her and her team. But before we sign off, is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you want to say? Oh, but let's not hang up the phone before we have this point out there.
I will just leave us. I think we've had a really great nurturing conversation, but I will just leave us with this thought, which is we have the power within ourselves to get to the place where we are this outflowing, this outpouring of vitality that leads to fertility.
Mhm.
So if someone has taken that power away from you, take that power right back.
Mhm.
I encourage you to take it back and to own it and then to find the team that actually empowers you to live it.
Amen. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful because the taking away has been kind of so insidious and over time that I think that many people don't even realize it's been taken away. And then they don't even know really how to begin to take it back. So just whatever one thing feels empowering to you today, take it back, and you don't even have to make a pronouncement. Let it be your own little sort of secret inner smile like, yep, I got this. I got this. Yep, I'm going to have that vegetable today. And yep, I'm going to put my face to the sun in the morning, and I'm going to turn off my blue light, and I'm going to, hug up my partner, and get all of those good oxytocin hormones flowing as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you very,
Absolutely.
very much for your time. It's been a delight. I personally could talk with you all day, but I know that we all have things to do, so we're gonna tally ho and let the listening audience reach out to you with their questions as they read the show notes. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
having me
very
today.
much.